You know, I wasn't expecting to have to Google what counts as a war crime when I started this video. Hello! I am currently going back and playing through all of World of Warcraft's old leveling content, starting with the Burning Crusade expansion, as that was the first one that came out. So far, we have gone through all 4 of the starting zones, As You Mist and Blood Mist for the Draenei, Eversong, and the Ghostlands for the Blood Elves. I nearly forgot. And today we're looking at the first of the Outland leveling zones, Hellfire Peninsula. This is gonna be a very big video, because this is a very big zone and there's a lot going on, so I want to try and get into it right away. But first, as this is a zone that has both Horde and Alliance questlines, we are playing through it with 2 different characters. On the Alliance side, we have a Draenei restoration shaman named Cenarion. Fun fact about Cenarion, he is a cat person, and I decided this after having him fly around on the star-touched fur line for the entire time that I was playing through the zone. And on the Horde side, we are playing Loriandril, a Blood Elf arcane mage. Oh, I need a fun fact for him too now. Let me think. Loriandril loves the new Sabrina Carpenter album. Don't ask me how that works. I don't know how he's heard it, but he has, and he loves it. Let's get into it! Right, okay, so there are a few things that you probably need to know before we get into Hellfire Peninsula itself. Well, okay, actually there's like a lot that you should probably know, but we don't have time to get into all of that. See, a lot of the prior context for Outland as a whole comes from the original Warcraft games, which I haven't played. I do intend to play at some point, I just haven't had the chance to yet. So with that being said, if there's anything that I get wrong in any of my explanations, feel free to correct me. I am more than happy to see comments correcting me on things that I've gotten wrong, because there is just so much going on in the story and the lore, and there's a lot of information coming from different places. You've got the Warcraft games, you've got the books, and then you've got World of Warcraft itself, and I'm mostly going off of World of Warcraft itself, so if there's anything that's like contradictions to other media or things that I've just misinterpreted, please let me know. I am always more than happy to read about that. Right, anyway, so world's fastest summary of Outland. So back in the day there was this planet called Draenei. You might have heard of it. Pretty important place. It was the homeworld of the orcs. About 26, I believe, years ago from where we are in the game, the orcs decided to invade Azeroth through a massive gateway called the Dark Portal, and this is what kicked off the very first Warcraft game. A few years later, a bad dude doing some bad things decided to open up a bunch of dimensional portals, and that ended up tearing the planet of Draenei apart, turning it into the crumbling hunk of rock we now know as Outland. Hellfire Peninsula is the easternmost point of Outland, and home to the Dark Portal. It used to be a lush jungle full of life and orcs, and now it's a barren wasteland, basically, just corrupted by fell magic. Delightful! So you may be wondering, why are we choosing to spend our time in such a delightful place? Well, the Dark Portal has been reopened, and the Burning Legion are now doing their best to invade Azeroth. The Burning Legion, if you recall, are the Warcraft universe's big demon baddies that have invaded and conquered countless worlds, and they really want to do that to our world as well. But being super cool adventuring people who are really rather fond of Azeroth, we're not gonna let that happen. So forces from both the Alliance and the Horde have jumped through the Dark Portal to take the fight to the Legion. So this is where our Hellfire Peninsula story begins. Now that we're out of starting zone territory, all of our quest lines are very helpfully split up into handy dandy story chapters. Hellfire Peninsula has 14 chapters, 6 for the Alliance, 6 for the Horde, and 2 that are neutral. In addition to this, we also have 4 instances to go through, but because this video is already going to be way too long without looking at the dungeons and raids, I'm going to do those in a separate little bonus video that will come out not long after this one, so stay tuned for that! Alright. With all of that out of the way, we can jump into our very first story chapter, Disrupt the Burning Legion. This chapter, if you can believe it, is largely centered around disrupting the Burning Legion. After stepping through the Dark Portal, the Alliance forces are flown to Honorhold. Honorhold is a great little town with a lot of history. Founded by the Sons of Lothar, we'll come back to them in a minute, Honorhold is full of Alliance soldiers that have been trapped in Outland for the past 20 years, ever since the Dark Portal closed. The leader of Honor Hold is Force Commander Danath Trollbane. You may recognize him from the recent Legacy of Arathor quests. Trollbane sends us off to see Sergeant Ultimus, who sends us on quests around Expedition Point and Shatter Point, largely consisting of us blowing up Legion forces and portals from both on the ground and in the air. But also given a little bit of context on how the Dark Portal was opened in the first place, which was thanks to a big old demon lord called Lord Kazakh. I believe this was part of the Burning Crusade pre-patch. I was too young to have actually played the pre-patch, so if anyone in the comments was actually there for that, let us know what the pre-patch was like. I would love to hear it. All I know about it is that you could get a tabard, I think, and I'm very jealous because I fucking love collecting tabards, and that's one I know I'll never be able to get. After our successful attempts at putting a dent in the Legion's forces, we are told about the Forge Camps, which are where they're constructing their Fel Reavers. We've seen the Fel Reavers stomping around in the background of everything we've done so far, so it is no surprise that we would be wanting to put a stop to their construction as soon as possible. Apparently the easternmost Forge Camp isn't actually finished yet, so we sort of have the chance to go in there and shut it down before it's fully up and running. Whilst we're up there kicking butt, we find some Burning Legion plans, which we bring back to Warp Scryer Kriv to translate. These plans were originally attack plans sent by a demon called Erasius the Cruel, who was one of Lord Kazakh's main lieutenants. We head west to the Pools of Agonar to take care of him. We will come back to the Pools of Agonar later. For the moment, we're just sort of popping our head in to say hello and kill a giant demon. Once we're back at Honor Hold, we're able to ask our buddy Trollbane a bit more about why him and the Sons of Lothar are actually here. This bit of the lore isn't actually really relevant to the overall storyline of Hellfire Peninsula and the quest that we're going on here, but it is very relevant to the overall Warcraft story, so please indulge me going on a little bit of a tangent to talk about it real quick. The Sons of Lothar are perhaps better known as the Alliance Expedition, or at least this is the name that I knew them by. Remember the very bad dude that I mentioned before, whose interdimensional portals sort of ripped Draenor apart? The Alliance Expedition followed him through the portal to try and put a stop to him and his other orcish forces, but they all ended up trapped here on Outland when the Dark Portal closed. The expedition's 5 leaders, Trollbane, Khadgar, Kurdrin, Turalyon, and Illyria all ended up separated. In this little chat with Trollbane, he says that he personally believes his dearest friends to be lost to the void, which is very sad. We chatted a little bit in my Ghostlands video about Illyria and her sisters, and I mentioned that Illyria specifically was missing in Outland. This is the context for that. Her and her husband Turalyon are both seemingly lost somewhere in Outland, or in the space between worlds, the Twisting Nether. But fun fact, Illyria and Turalyon have a son, and he's here in Honor Hold. His name is Arator, and he's come through the Dark Portal to try and find his parents after being separated from them for the past 18 years. And that is literally all we get to know about him. And not just in this zone, in this entire expansion. He's just there in Honor Hold, and he tells us that he's looking for his parents. And man, that kind of bums me out. I feel like it was very underutilized here. But like I said, this whole situation overall isn't very relevant to Hellfire Peninsula, so I guess I'm grateful that we at least got like a little cameo from him. Hope he becomes more relevant in Midnight. I'm rooting for him. What else? There was something else I was going to mention. Oh, the aforementioned 5 leaders of the Alliance Expedition are the subjects of the giant statues outside Stormwind. Maybe I should have led with that. That might have made it a bit more clear how important these guys are. Anyway, back to the story. At the Honor Hold Inn, Father Malgor Daviticus is very sad and very drunk, and he tells us about this tome that he used to have called Mysteries of the Light. He says that every morning Turalyon would read a passage from this tome to inspire the other forces of the expedition. And after Turalyon gave this tome back to Daviticus, he thought he would keep it safe at the Expedition Armory. But the Expedition Armory is destroyed and full of of ghosts. So we head over there to go and find this tome and also to try and free some of the ghosts from their ghostly torment. When we give the tome back to Davinicus, he gets all choked up and tells us that, you know, when you spend so many years fighting alongside someone, they can become closer than family. Which I think is a wild thing to say when Terrellion's son is standing right next to him. His son that has not seen him in 18 years. Davinicus, dude, read the room. Oh my god. Colonel Jules, in Honor Hold, has been struck with a demonic corruption. We're sent to talk to Klaatu in the Honor... Hi! We're sent to talk to Klaatu in the Honor Hold Inn, who tells us Jules was cursed by Shattered Hand orcs, and now his spirit is tormented. But though his tormented spirit is ultimately seeking peace, the only way for him to get that peace is through vengeance. So we're asked to take an anchorite relic to the spot where Jules' soul was cursed, Gorgaz Outpost, to kill some Shattered Hand orcs, and to then kill their spirits. Once we've done that, Klaatu says that he's very sad that the path to peace was such a violent one, which is very in character for draenei, and I'm very fond of that. Klaatu also tells us that a dog named Feifei has stolen his prayer beads, and so we have to go on a little quest with the dog to find the prayer beads. In the time it's taken us to do all of this, Jules's condition has worsened greatly, so we need to start the ritual to save him right now! It's a very fun little sequence. Jules ends up like levitating and spinning around the room, and we have to clean up all of the weird little corruption goop that he starts leaking. It's great. Warp Scryer Kriv, the guy who translated those Legion plans for us, he tells us about the Path of Glory. Oh boy. Leading from Hellfire Citadel in the middle of the zone all the way to the Dark Portal, the Path of Glory is a massive road literally paved with the skeletons of slaughtered and subsequently trampled draenei. Even she knows that this is bad news. Oof. Kriv gets us to cleanse some of these trampled skeletons because with the way that they were killed, they were denied a proper burial, and their tormented spirits have just been hanging around the Path of Glory, and oh my god, ooh, it's such a big yikes. Once we're done with that, Kriv tells us that the Path of Glory is thankfully not the only trace of draenei here in Hellfire Peninsula. To the west is the Temple of Telhamat, where we meet Aman the Wise, who tells us a bit more about the Pools of Aganar, the place where we killed that big demon a couple of chapters ago. These pools used to be a sacred spring, but a giant pit lord named Aganar was killed there, and his blood tainted the holy waters, and then a bunch more demons showed up and just settled in, basically. We kill a bunch of said demons and end up doing a little cleansing ritual on the actual giant corpse of Aganar that's just still there in the middle of the pools. So this cleansing ritual ends up summoning Agonar's son, Agonis, and he's not very happy about what we're trying to do there, but we're able to take care of him easy peasy. And we report our success back to Aman at the Temple of Telhamat, and he tells us that the work we're doing here will have a deep impact on the world, which is just very nice to hear. Here at the Temple of Telhamat, there are quite a few Broken. The Broken are a subrace of draenei that were mutated by fell energy, and were absolutely thrilled to see that the Dark Portal was reopened again, and they've been heading towards it in droves to try and escape Outland. However, they've been travelling there through a giant ravine known as the Great Fissure, which is full of these creatures called rock flayers, which find the Broken to be very easy prey. So we are sent down there to clear the way a little bit and grant the Broken safe passage, basically. We hear that at the ruins of Shinar, there are quite a few more Broken that have been enslaved by Illidari taskmasters, and this is somehow the first time that we are talking about the Illidari and Illidan. So we know that our main enemy here in Outland is the Burning Legion, but everywhere we go, we are also at odds with the Illidari, who are also trying to get rid of the Burning Legion. The Illidari are led by Illidan Stormrage, who used to be a night elf, but sorta corrupted himself in his blinding quest to destroy the Burning Legion, and became the very first of what we now know as the Demon Hunters. He's a very important dude who has been involved in a lot of stories in a lot of different places, and I am somewhat confused by him. I think this is me once again showing my lack of knowledge when it comes to the Warcraft games, but I don't understand why we spend so much of this expansion trying to stop him and the Illidari. Because, like, we're all working towards a common goal, right? Like, I get that him, like, eating the skull of Gul'dan or whatever he did was, you know, not great and upset a lot of people. But, like, why are we wasting our energy beating each other up when we could be working towards the much bigger threat of the Burning Legion? I would love it if someone could explain this for me. Pretty please. I've done research on it. I just don't understand. Also at the ruins of Shannara we find another broken called Akoru the Firecaller, who tells us that he was one of 4 elders who used to lead the Dreghud tribe. They're the ones who are now enslaved here at the ruins of Shannara. He's managed to find 2 of the other leaders, but the last one, Naladu, he has yet to be able to locate. We're able to find him, however, in a little hut at the back of the ruins. And he tells us that the reason the Illidari are here at the ruins is because they're looking for a powerful crystal. But he thinks that in all likelihood the crystal isn't actually there at the ruins of Shannara. Naladu gets us to free the other Dreghud elders and then gives us a staff that used to be like a powerful symbol within their tribe to use to kill the big demon baddie that's wandering around, Azrith the Merciless. That's that chapter done. Back at the Temple of Telhamat, anchorite Obadiah tells us that his brother Sadai was very optimistically trying to work out some sort of peace treaty with the nearby Mag'har orcs. We'll talk about the Mag'har orcs in a little bit. We've got a chapter dedicated to them, but that's on the Horde side. Anyway, Sadai's been missing for a few days, and Obadiah is understandably quite worried about this. So we go out to look for him, and we find Sadai very nearby to the Temple of Telhamat, but unfortunately, rather dead. We tell Obadiah, and he says that the orcs who killed him were cowards because Sadai was unarmed and genuinely just seeking peace. Makuru, another broken, is nearby and hears us talking about this, and he is furious because he saw Sadai like a brother and he wants us to avenge him. So he sends us up to the nearby Mag'har grounds to kill a bunch of Mag'har orcs. When we return, Obadiah runs over and is like, this is not how we do things, and Makuru defends himself saying that the orcs totally started it and in all actuality deserve worse than death for what they did. And Obadiah is like, listen, totally get it. Mans was literally my brother, you know, actual brother, but like this is not the way that we deal with things, and killing a bunch of orcs in the name of vengeance is like totally disrespecting Sadai's memory. So we go to chat to Aman, the leader here, if you recall, looking for a way to atone for our actions on Makuru's behalf. And Aman gets us to go find some relics, and we take one of them to the place where we found Sadai's body, and we are granted a vision, and this vision reveals that Sadai wasn't killed by Mag'har orcs. In fact, the Mag'har orcs were leading him peacefully off the grounds, albeit with a very strong suggestion to never return. But the little group of them was then ambushed by fell orcs and ultimately cut down by a particularly nasty fell orc called Kroon Spinebreaker. With that new context, we return to Aman, who tells us he doesn't know if the draenei's conflict with the orcs is going to continue, but at the end of the day, we should all just be open to all possibilities. And with that, we're finished with the Alliance-specific chapters. We will catch up with Zeralin at the end when we come to the neutral chapters, but for now, let's go catch up with Loriandril. So this first chapter perfectly mirrors the Alliance side, and as this comment points out, this is actually true for the entire zone, not just in the quest lines, but also in the locations and settlements all throughout Hellfire Peninsula, which I think is such a great way to structure this first zone to ensure that both factions get a really good and balanced experience and introduction to the expansion. So Horde adventurers come through the Dark Portal and are immediately flown to Thrallmar. Thrallmar hasn't actually been around for very long and was founded founded by a guy called Nazgrel, and he's the main dude who we're here to see. Nazgrel does a lot of grumbling and glaring because all of his people keep dying, which, like, I guess is fair. And he sends us off to see Sergeant Shatterskull, who tells us that we look fresh and unspoiled by the horrors of this land, which is nice, I guess. He then sends us off to Reaver's Fall, where we have the expected and very explosive missions of dealing with the Burning Legion's forces. This is a very short chapter, my description of which is then made even shorter by the fact that it is just basically a mirror to the Alliance chapter, Overthrow the Overlord. We're given very similar quests involving the Forge camps, except this time when we find the Burning Legion plans, we take them to Magister Bloodhawk to translate. We're sent off to the Pools of Agana, stabby stabby demon killy, you get the idea. Now we're getting into it. Vertok Axebreaker tells us about the Fell Orcs, who were corrupted by nasty demon blood and are consumed by madness and bloodlust. Vertok gets us to get some blood samples from a small subset of the Fell Orcs known as the Bone Chewers. Fun fact, the Bone Chewers are called that because when times got tough, they were the clan of orcs willing to resort to cannibalism. Fun! Is that a fun fact? Calling it a yikes fact just doesn't really have the same ring to it, you know? Anyway, once we have some samples of the Bone Chewer's blood, we're sent on a bit of a roundabout tour of apothecaries. The main part of this questline, I'm gonna be honest, kinda sucked. We're sent to Zeth Gore, home of the Bleeding Hollow Orcs here in Hellfire Peninsula, to get even more blood samples. We're then asked to boil these blood samples using a giant cauldron belonging to the Bleeding Hollow Orcs. And oh my god, you had to boil the blood one by one, and I had to keep my bag open the entire time because the quest log didn't start counting the blood until then, after you'd boiled it. And then anytime you boiled it, a bunch of these fucking scarabs would appear for some reason. And all of these scarabs, and it just, oh my god. It was a whole thing. Anyway, we're sent with the blood and a report on our findings back to Thrallmar to meet Apothecary Antonovich. You can actually read the report before you hand it in, and it mentions that the demonic taint found in this blood is eerily similar to the demonic taint found in the blood of the orcs on Azeroth. But that shouldn't be possible, because our orcs, the ones like living in Durotar, you know, green guys, super cool and all that, they had their blood tainted by a pit lord named Manaroth. We've talked a little bit about pit lords, that's what Aganar was, very, very big scary demon. But this specific pit lord, Manaroth, he's like super dead. Like, has his corpse hanging in Orgrimmar sort of dead. So there should be no way that these fell orcs on Outland have their blood tainted by Manaroth. But if it's another pit lord, surely we would know, right? Like, if the Burning Legion was hiding a pit lord somewhere, we would know about it, right? They're very, very big. Anyway, Antonovich just sends us to go kill some more orcs to power his weird demon scryer thing, which he then gets us to take to Hellfire Basin to get a reading. The reading itself is hilarious, even if the quest to get it, like, sucks ass. But the important things that we learn from this are, one, that there is something definitely at least Pitlord adjacent within Hellfire Citadel, and two, that this demon scryer would very, very much like to feast on Antonovich's soul. Pretty please and thank you. Spinebreaker Post is a wee little outpost in the south of Hellfire Peninsula, and there are a bunch of people there who need our help. We're sent back to Zeth Gore to take out some baddies, burn down some buildings, and collect a weird, creepy, floating green eyeball thing, and to then kill the witch that controls it, and steal his eye patch, because apparently it contains dark secrets. Sure. Hey, remember the Expedition Armory? Broken down fort full of creepy ghosts? The Horde knows about it too. And they have decided to name the ghosts that live there the Unyielding because of their refusal to join the Horde's forces. Emissary Mordiba believes that we should try and force them to join the Horde's forces. While we're out there, we find an alliance tome written in some sort of secret alliance cipher, which turns out to be a complete history of the Unyielding that they somehow kept up to date even after they died. And of course, this means that we can better understand their motivations and therefore more easily manipulate them into joining our side. Yay! So their main motivation is revenge, as is the case with most ghosts, I feel. As the expedition armory was destroyed many years ago by Death Knights and orcs. Like, no wonder these ghosts don't want to join the Horde. The Horde that is led by orcs! Anyway, we find this horn and we use it to summon a bunch of the ghosts to destroy the guy that captured one of their siege towers, and it's a whole thing, and then we go and tell the ghostly commander about all of this, and somehow this is enough to gain their trust, and the ghosts join the Horde's forces. And then a bunch of them appear to, like, honor us as a hero. And I feel kinda weird about this whole thing. Ugh. Anyway, Ogath the Mad has been wandering Outland searching for the secrets of the Void. So we help him by heading to the warp fields to kill a bunch of Void Walkers to power his warp rift generator, which we then use to summon Void Baron Galaxus to get his soul shard to give back to Ogath the Mad. It's a very strange little side quest, but I just think the name Void Baron Galaxus goes so hard. The Horde have sent an envoy to another settlement called Falcon Watch, but apparently this envoy is going to be assassinated by Kroon Spinebreaker. Hey, we know him, he's the guy who killed our guy Sedai. Ugh, mans has been busy. So we find this envoy's corpse, and he has a weird looking axe sticking out of his back. So we grab this axe and take it back to Nazgrel, who sees it and is like, oh my god, does this mean that they're here? And we're like, huh? And Nazgrel tells us that Thrall, war chief of the Horde, super cool dude, he backed this whole expedition, you know, not just to defend against the Burning Legion, but also because he wanted to find out more about the origins of the orcs. As we've mentioned, Outland used to be Draenei. Draenei was the homeworld of the orcs. So Nazgrel sees this axe and immediately recognizes that it was made with the old ways, and says we need to find out who made it so that we can learn more about these people and ultimately about the history of the orcs. We track the origins of the axe using a totem that summons a spirit wolf for us to follow. You know, as one does. And the spirit wolf leads us up north through the mountains to Magha Post. I was unbelievably excited about this because whilst I think the orc lore is super interesting, I personally don't actually know a lot about it, and the Magha are such an important part of it. I actually had to do this quest twice because I was so busy writing all of my notes when I got to Magha Post that my spirit wolf disappeared, and then the Magha orc dude wouldn't talk to me anymore, so I had to run down the bottom and do the whole thing again. Anyway, we're greeted by Gorkhan Bloodfist, though I think greeted is perhaps too strong of a word because he is not very happy to see us, and we actually get a little pop-up in the chat box that says you are now unfriendly with the Magha orcs, which is super cool. But we have a quick little chat with him, and he is in utter disbelief of the news that we bring of a land beyond the Dark Portal where the orcs are free of demonic corruption and led by the son of Durotan, and he says that he needs to send word to Nagrand immediately because Hellscream will want to hear about this. And I mean, that's an important name right there. I'm sure many people's ears perked up at the sound of Hellscream, but we're not there yet. That is for a couple of zones time, so just keep that one in the back of your mind and hold it there for a bit. Gorkhan sends us back to Thrallmar with a letter that says that the Magha welcome the people there. It's a very quick little chapter, but it's very important and sets up a lot for the future. That other settlement that the envoy was going to before he got stabbed in the back, Falcon Watch. It's a Blood Elf outpost. When we get there, we meet Ranger Venrin, who tells us that whilst we may have reached the Promised Land, there's no way that we will be able to meet Kael'thas, the Blood Elf Prince, by as he puts it, desperately lunging across Outland. For now, he tells us that the Alliance are being a nuisance, and we need to help make safe passage for all of the Blood Elves that are streaming in from the Dark Portal. So, mirroring the Alliance side, we are sent down into the Great Fissure to clear out all the rock flayers and make way for the Blood Elf pilgrims. We need to get some fell blood samples from the pools of Agonar, and when we get back we find out about this cleansing ritual that the draenei are gonna do, and apparently we need to stop this ritual because if they go through with it, then the Horde will lose their fell blood supply. And, okay, I think that this is an issue of priorities and perspective, because surely we should be in favor of cleansing the giant pit lord corpse and getting rid of the demonic corruption, right? Like, do we want a giant demon corpse swamp? Is that something we want? Oh my goodness, I think this is my favorite little questline in the zone. Okay, Magistrix Corinda tells us that her husband was fascinated with the pools of Agonar, and like, me too, can't blame him. But he went missing in there a few days ago, and everyone is telling her that he's probably dead, and she can accept that, but she doesn't want his research to die with him, so she sends us there to go and find his backpack. We bring him back to Corinda, and she starts reading through his journal. And as she's reading through his journal, she realizes, he wasn't researching the pools of Agonar, he was researching a hot young floozy. Those are the words she used. I don't know what to tell you. He was having an affair. So she sends us to confront his best friend, who tells us that the woman her husband was having an affair with was Viera Sunwhisper. So Corinda gets us to lure her away from Falcon Watch and then use her scroll of retribution on Viera, which turns her into a rat, which is then promptly chased by a cat named Twinkle. This game is fucking wild sometimes. Oh my god, and then she gives us her wedding ring as a quest reward. It's iconic. Oh my god, and now are you ready for like a complete tone shift? Apothecary Azathan has a draenei prisoner here at Falcon Watch, and he is interested to see whether it is demonic energy that corrupts draenei into becoming the broken. So he gets us to go out and get some demonic essence. And we bring it back, and he makes up a little concoction that he then forces the draenei prisoner to drink. And the draenei prisoner just dies. Oh my god. Is this like a war crime? It feels like a war crime. I don't know how to Google what a war crime is without like being put on a list. Like, big yikes. The final two story chapters of the zone are neutral, so both the Horde and Alliance get to do the exact same quests from the same quest givers in the same locations. This chapter involves us helping out a few different goblins who have ended up here in Outland. Screaming Screed Lockheed is a Zeppelin pilot who has unfortunately crashed out in the wasteland. He needs our help gathering materials to fix his Zeppelin, as well as getting a whole lot of food for his co-pilot to cook. We then help out his cousin, Foreman Razzlecraz, who is just very displeased with the overall vibes here in Outland. He has sort of just claimed a mine behind Thrallmar for himself, so he helps us get rid of all of the demons that have sort of moved in there. And that's the end of that chapter. Some quick context for our final story chapter. The Cenarion Circle is a group of druids, both Alliance and Horde, who are typically based back in Moonglade on Azeroth. When the Dark Portal opened, they sent through a smaller force to do some research on the wildlife here on Outland. We meet Thea Redmayne, who is interested in studying the continuous mutation of the creatures here in Outland, so she gets us to get some blood samples from the nearby Hellboar in an attempt to cure them of their sort of demonic corruption, but when we then go to actually test it on a Hellboar, it doesn't work. It just corrupts it further and turns it into like a giant Hellboar called Dread Tusk, and we have to kill it. And then finally, a while back, a massive red crystal fell from the sky and has been just generally corrupting the area around it, and while we're clearing out that area, we find a smaller fragment of the crystal that is apparently emanating a sickly, evil aura. Hey, this is starting to sound kind of familiar. We show this crystal to Galandrian Nightbreeze, who eventually gets us to try and heal the land around the crystal using the Cenarion circle druidic magic, basically. But then, as we're doing the healing ritual, a projection of a blood elf named Pathalion the Calculator appears and gets all angry at us for interfering with his schemes. He then summons a giant colossus to defend the crystal and says that he, Pathalion, and Prince Kael'thas demand that the crystal be protected. Prince Kael'thas? You mean our blood elf leader? Who came to Outland a while ago, supposedly, looking for a way to free the blood elves of their arcane addiction, and is, super devoted to his people, and is the reason the blood elves see Outland as the promised land. What? Surely he hasn't gone kind of crazy and started dropping huge corrupted crystals out of the sky. I'm sure he still has his people's best interests at heart. I'm sure everything's fine. Anyway, that's the end of the questing in Hellfire Peninsula. There was so much going on in this zone. If I had to sum it all up in one word, I think that word would be bombastic. Hellfire Peninsula had a lot to do, not just in introducing people to the Burning Crusade expansion, but also in living up to the expectations set forward by the original Warcraft games. Hellfire Peninsula, and by extension all of Outland, are iconic places that players have been hearing about for years and years and years, and are so deeply entrenched in history for so many different races on Azeroth. It's the homeland of the orcs. It's a place of deep tragedy for the draenei. It's where Illyria and Turalyon went missing. It's so many things, and Hellfire Peninsula did a great job of weaving all of that in, while still keeping the war with the Burning Legion at the forefront. It has these huge moments like all of the bombing missions and destroying the Forge camps that make you feel like you're really starting to put a dent in the Legion's forces. But then it comes back to these smaller, more contained moments that keep the story really grounded. On the Horde side, you have the connection to the Magar orcs and Thrall's true motivations of wanting to discover the history of his people. Talking to Nazgrel about it, he says, "Somewhere amidst the wreckage of this world, the true tale of the Orcish people lies hidden. I must admit that in my darkest moments, I fear that that tale should remain untold." Because this place is evidence of the orcs' origins, sure, but also evidence of some of their greatest crimes. The path of glory is chilling in a way I can't even really put words to. And it makes the Alliance side quests involving the Temple of Telhamat and the Broken that much more impactful, as you realize the draenei here are just being constantly haunted by one of the greatest tragedies they've ever faced. It's like the Dead Scar taken up to 1,000, and you guys know how I feel about the Dead Scar. And it's even crazier to me that with all of this tragedy and cruelty and general horror on display, that the Blood Elves are arriving and seeing this as their promised land. The place where their beloved prince, Kael'thas Sunstrider, will save their people. Something about that makes me feel very emotional. I couldn't tell you what the emotion is, but it sure is something. I honestly think my favorite thing about this zone is how much history there is. Every quest that you go on feels important and tied to the story, even if some of them can sort of drag on for a bit. There's also just nowhere in this zone that feels truly safe. And I think that was a great choice. I know some of the upcoming zones, particularly Zangarmarsh and Nagrand, are really comforting, cozy, nostalgic places for a lot of people. But I think starting this whole experience with the overwhelming and even kind of quite off-putting Hellfire Peninsula was incredibly effective at setting the overall tone for this expansion. First and foremost, I loved the Dark Portal. Oh my god. I think my favorite thing about it is that it is just fucking massive. The scale of it is so immensely overwhelming. Like, I get that they were marching a whole orcish army through there, but did they need to make it that tall? It's huge. And especially the fact that you come out and it's got this huge staircase, literally called the Stair of Destiny. It's so intense. And I love the fact that it is this like bright green swirling portal, so that not only can you tell that it's very, very demonic and Burning Legion related, but it's also at such contrast to the overall very, very red and orange tone of the zone. It's brilliant and I love it, and I love the giant statues, I love the giant staircase, oh my god, I love the whole thing. I love the sky! I think this would honestly be a lot of people's favorite thing about Hellfire Peninsula. And like, I know that the sky is the same in a lot of the Outland zones. Like, you get those cool planets and the weird little twirly bits of twisting nether. But specifically in Hellfire Peninsula, because the whole sky is tinted red because of Hellfire Peninsula's like specific demon taint it's got going on, it's just such a cool sight, and it really makes you feel like you are not on Azeroth anymore, which is brilliant, and I think exactly what they needed to do in the first zone of this expansion. It's so good. I like just sitting there looking at it. Oh god, the Path of Glory. I don't even know how to put it into words. You know, it's again something that I think is very effective at setting the tone of this zone, because it's just like, from a distance, if you didn't know the history behind this, from a distance just sort of looks like a road, just like a stone road. But then you get up close to it and you look down and you see it's just skeletons, it's just bones. And the scale of it is so big, and the more that you sort of look in and the more that you see how far it extends, you're like, oh my god, that's a lot of dead draenei. I love it because it's so horrifying. I love how overwhelming the Legion feels. This is something I think they did really, really well, because there's a lot of points in World of Warcraft where it's like building up to a big conflict, and then they're like, yeah, we're sending in you, one guy, and you are gonna take down this whole army, basically. That's not how it feels on Hellfire Peninsula. Things like the bombing missions specifically really add to that feeling, because it's like, you can't just run in there and kill everything, because there's so many elite mobs, and there's just so many mobs in general, so you have to go and fly up on a griffin or whatever and drop a bunch of goblin made bombs, and that's the only way you can even think about putting a dent in their forces. It's brilliant. It's really, really brilliant. The little breadcrumb quest leading into the Falcon Watch chapter has specific dialogue if you're a blood elf. The guy there, oh, I hate him because he has a stupid name. Martik Telsildori or Torsildori or something like that. It's a stupid name. If you're a blood elf and you go and talk to him, he's like, hey, what are you still doing here? Don't you know we have a Sindori outpost here? And I love that. Anytime there is something race specific or class specific, I am just so here for it. Give me that character fantasy. I love the Pools of Agonar. I think, like, when I first went there to kill Razius or whatever his name was, I remember flying in there and being like, what the fuck is that? Because it's just a giant pit lord corpse, and they don't explain it unless you do that quest from the Temple of Tal Hamat. And I just think that's such a cool idea for an area in his own, is this like corrupted, what used to be a holy spring with just a giant pit lord corpse, and like his massive sword is there and you can like walk under it, and it's just, it's so cool. It's such a cool little area. I love the Fel Reavers. They're so iconic, and the fact that they are just there in the background of everything you do. And like, I've played through Hellfire Peninsula a few times now, and like doing it with Chromie time or whatever and being super out leveled for the zone back in the day, like the Fel Reavers have never been terrifying to me, you know, but I know that that sound that they make still incites fear in so many people just because of how it was when Burning Crusade first came out. I think it's brilliant. I feel like it goes without saying at this point that I love the music in every zone that I go to. But specifically in Hellfire Peninsula, there are bits of the music where there's like an electric guitar. And I think it's so good because that's something that you don't hear in a lot of the zone music, because it's very, you know, it's like quite high fantasy at points, you know, and you don't hear a lot of electric guitar in high fantasy. But you do in Hellfire Peninsula. The only other place where I can remember there being something like that in the music is in Maldraxxus in Shadowlands. If there is anywhere else though, I would be thrilled to hear about it, because I think it's so cool and so effective. And the fact that it sounds kind of out of place amongst the rest of the instruments, I think works with the whole vibe that they have here in Hellfire Peninsula. NPC names. So WoW generally is known for having a lot of really funny and really good NPC names, and they do a lot of pun names, but they seem to go really hard with it in Burning Crusade. And in Hellfire Peninsula there is quite a few. There is the innkeeper in Thrallmar is called Floyd Pincus. The innkeeper in the Temple of Tal Hamat is Ophira Windfury, and the flightmaster in Spinebreaker Post is Amelia Earhart. And those are only the ones that I noticed. Like, there's probably a lot of other references that I didn't get just because I'm quite young. I loved the quest with the demon scryer thing, just because of, like, the way that you can interact with it and the way that it talks to you. It's like there is like a living demon thing within that scryer. And at first it's being very, very polite to you and almost kind of curious. And then it's still being very polite as it is telling you how much it really wants to like feast on Apothecary Antonovich's soul. And it just, it's so brilliant. Again, the quest that you have to do with it is really annoying and I didn't enjoy doing that, but it was worth it to get that like quest text dialogue with the demon scryer. Oh my goodness, I loved the red crystal in the very final chapter and the way that it tied in both with Bloodmist Isle and with Kael'thas Sunstrider, because back on Bloodmist Isle we see these same red crystals. These are Exodar crystals. Like, I'm 99% sure the crystal that was dropped here in Hellfire Peninsula is a corrupted Exodar crystal, because we see the Sun Fury Blood Elves, which are Kael'thas's personal Blood Elf forces that he took with him to Outland. They were portaling to Bloodmist Isle to experiment on these crystals and to steal them for themselves and to twist the corruption already imbued on them so that it could be like weaponized basically. And then we see these same crystals being dropped into Hellfire Peninsula, and then we get direct confirmation that Kael'thas was the one who dropped it. Oh my god, that was so satisfying to see how that came together for me, and it's something I'd never like known about before, and I think a lot of people wouldn't know about it because a lot of people haven't played through Bloodmist Isle. I got a comment specifically talking about Kael'thas in the Ghostlands video. This comment said, "I think it's quite clever that Kael'thas is not really mentioned during the conflict with the Scourge and the Ghostlands, as it further mirrors his absence in what happened during the Scourging of Quel'Thalas, making him seem like an unreliable/questionable character within the context of Burning Crusade. Kael'thas deeply cares about his people and what happened to them and is working to help them, but is not physically present to the player during their time of need." Which is so true, because we hear about him like traveling to Outland because he wants to help his people and because he wants to find a cure for this arcane addiction, but when do we ever actually see him? We don't actually get to hear from him and see what he's up to until he's gone off the rails a little bit, but we're not quite there yet. We're just starting to get hints of it. Moving on. That one went on for a while. In the Ruins of Shannara, when you're killing the giant demon Azrith the Merciless, when you use the staff on him, he turns into Azrith the Powerless. I thought that was quite a cool detail, because you're told that the staff will steal his powers, so obviously he turns into Azrith the Powerless. It's quite cool. In On a Hold, there is a giant head on a spike. I don't know what that head belongs to. I couldn't find anyone talking about it. If you know what that head is, who it belonged to, and why it's on a spike and on a hold, please let me know. I'm very curious. I thought it was cool. It's a giant head on a spike. I feel like you don't see that a lot in like alliance settlements. I liked the model for the Bone Chewer mutants, the cannibalistic orcs that are either side of the Path of Glory. Some of their models have been updated to like the modern orc model, but some of them are still the old school ones, and specifically the Bone Chewer mutants are very crazy looking, corrupted fell orcs that are like genuinely quite scary looking. And I really liked that. I thought that was cool. And on a similar note, I really liked the model for the Terrafiends in the Pools of Agonar. I'm not sure what it is that I liked about their model, but I just liked them. I loved getting to see proper draenei architecture, even though it was a little bit broken down in the Temple of Tal Hamat and the Ruins of Shannara. It is still like draenei architecture, and up until this point in the game, we've only gotten to see the Exodar, which is like a spaceship and also in kind of ruins now, so it was cool to get to see what draenei buildings actually look like. And then finally, this is technically from one of the dungeons, but in the Shattered Halls, there are a bunch of orc statues that are like in a lot of places holding up the roof, and I just think they look so cool. I really like giant statues, and I'd never seen this sort of statue in the game before, and it was just so cool, and they were there quite a few times throughout the Shattered Halls, and I really liked them. Oh my my god, that's everything. Wow, that was a lot, huh? That was a big zone. So as you might have guessed, the next zone that we will be looking at is Zangarmarsh, which I am super excited about because I know that this is a fan favorite zone. I really enjoy it. I've played through it a few times. I know that a lot of people are really fond of the ambience and the pacing of the quests and the music. I know is so special to a lot of people. So let me know in the comments if there are any specific parts of Zangarmarsh that are like really special to you, and I will keep an eye out for them. I love hearing what other people love about these zones. I feel like it helps me enjoy them even more, because I like getting to share this experience with everyone. Keep an eye out for when I put out the bonus video on the instances for Hellfire Peninsula. This is a bit of an experiment to see if I like doing it in this sort of format with having the instances in a separate bonus video to try and keep this video a little bit shorter. So also let me know what you think about that, because I am completely willing to try having it all as one big long video. I'm just very conscious that if I'm not careful, these videos could get very long. But yeah, that's all I got. Suppose I'll see you guys in Zangarmarsh. Bye!